Hi, welcome back to Ferrigno Freedom channel. I'm Dante Ferrigno, and I'm glad you're here. We're going to take a look at a video today that I've had several people email me about this particular video. It's what's wrong with the beef you buy. And for those of you who are wondering why I'm coming into your room right now to talk to you about beef, I have been doing a carnivore diet now for close to 3 years, a little over 3 years actually, where I eat nothing but ruminant meat, water, and salt. Ruminant meat is basically the red meats. It's deer, elk, buffalo, bison, cows, cattle, the ruminant animals, the red meat animals, the ones that we were told to watch out for because those are the ones that were going to kill us if we ate too much of them. Well, that's all I eat, and it's changed everything for the better in my life. So I don't know really what to think about all the things we've been told for so many years about this diet. At least I don't know what to say about them right now. I've got plenty of other videos where I talk about the things that I think about what's going on when it comes to what we've been told about food. But now that I've found my path better in the world, that I've found my way down the carnivore way of eating, and it has changed everything for the better for me. No more high blood pressure, no more hormone problems, so many other things that have just gone away, problems that I used to have, whether it was lipomas or leaky gut that I had for several years that doctors had no answers for, and all the pains and problems that went along with that. All of that's gone now, and I'm thankful to the lion diet for that, because if it wasn't for the lion diet, I might not be here today. I mean, I am just so thankful for this way of eating, and it simplified so many other things in my life because it's such a simple way to live. Eating meat, water, and salt, keeping it as simple as it can possibly be. I'm in and out of the grocery store in no time at all. I don't have to look at all those products that we think are food on the shelves, and try to pretend that I'm going to enjoy some of this stuff that they're trying to tell me is chocolate covered pancakes when it really looks like a bowl of cereal. There's all these things that we have in the grocery store that are just little mind tricks that we buy trying to make ourselves feel better for a few minutes, but they don't make us feel any better. They just make us sick. They just make us fat. They just make us tired. And I'm past that now. So I would like to take a closer look at the meat that I buy, because all I do buy is meat. And sometimes I wonder, where did this come from? How was it raised? How did they treat this animal? How did they feed this animal? Did this animal get sick very easily? Did they have to give it a lot of injections? Did they have to give it a lot of medicine? Uh, what's the story? You have no idea. You don't know how well they were raised. You don't know what the conditions were like in the place where they were slaughtered and how their carcass was handled for processing of meat. There's always these questions even when you have somebody you trust. Like, I have a good local rancher that I trust to raise the cattle properly, and he sends the meat to a processor, and I got somebody that I think does a decent job. But does anybody ever really know for sure? Well, let's take a little closer look and see what's going on when it comes to our meat, at least according to Trinity Vandenaker. I think I pronounced that right. I'm not sure. I've never heard them say their name. I've never even seen them speak in a video. I just had this video sent to me by several people. So let's go ahead and pot it up here and we'll take a look at it.
I want to get a good deal, right? Well, if you get a great deal on beef, you may just be buying pink slime instead. We know one thing. We know the price is rising in the stores for meat that we buy. And we know that ranchers are not making any more than they were. How is this happening? Well, I was able to catch up to a guy by the name of Mike Calicrate and have a conversation with him down in Wyoming. You're probably going to be a little bit shocked about what you buy in the grocery store and what impact what you buy has on the great land of the United States.
What is pink slime and how is it being used by?
Well, pink slime is really a byproduct of the boxed beef industry, which is the big meat packers that slaughter most of the 85% of the cattle in the country are slaughtered by these big meat packers that produce a boxed beef product. And that's compared to carcass business, 50 years ago. Now it's boxed beef.
Well, so carcass beef would be like the cow is hung in a full carcass with no hide on it and everything.
Right.
Versus being in a, like cut up in a box right off the bat, right?
That's right, right off the bat. So within 24 to 36 hours, an animal that is slaughtered at a big slaughterhouse that might do 6,000 animals a day is put into a box. So it's cut up into the primal pieces, the smaller pieces, not the final retail cuts, but the middle primal cuts. And what happens is, as a result of these fast chains, inexperienced workers, we're getting a lot of pathogens, contamination on the meat. Well, the problem is we're not dry aging, which is a natural intervention for pathogens. We're putting it right into a plastic bag and putting it in a box. Well, when you open up the plastic bag, you end up with the pathogens now starting to grow and wake up and become dangerous. And so what happens in the slaughterhouses, they do this trimming on the outside of the carcass. Well, that's where pathogens would be. Well, with the pink slime, or lean, finely textured beef, as it's also known as, LFTB, they're basically taking those trimmings and cooking them and spinning off the fat, and what's left is not necessarily muscle, it's connective tissue and stuff like that. It's pretty ugly. And then they pelletize that and sell it to hamburger processors, sausage makers, to add as a cheap filler. And that's what pink slime is. And during, what year was it? 2006, I think. Well, whatever year it was, ABC News did a story on this product, and it just blew up. And there was a housewife mom in San Antonio, Texas, that put out a petition saying, this is in our school lunch programs and it shouldn't be, and I'm not very happy about it. Well, she ended up with 250,000 signatures right away, and ABC News got on it and exposed the whole thing and interviewed the USDA scientists that thought it was a terrible thing that it was even in our food system. It should be just a rendering product that should go into pet food or something like that. And ABC News got a hold of it and blew it up, and then they also got sued by this company, Beef Products Incorporated. And
The company that's creating the pink slime, or
the company that's creating the pink slime,
okay,
along with advanced meat recovery and
sure,
other things like mechanically separated meat and other things that they do, and so it basically blew up, and BPI, Beef Products Incorporated, didn't really produce much after that for a while until the ABC case was settled. They got a bunch of money, and now and of course USDA decided that it didn't need to be labeled. Well, that's a big mistake. I mean,
so USDA decided that it didn't need to be put on the meat, that this concludes pink slime. Is that what you're talking about?
That's right.
Okay, so they're saying no, you don't need to know that you're eating pink slime.
Yeah, Joanne Smith was the undersecretary at the time, very, very big meat packer friendly, and she said, "Look, if it's pink, it's meat." And so they took the label off of the product, so nobody even knew. I mean, as if they would anyway. LFTB.
No, nobody knows.
Nobody. I mean, you don't know anyway. But still, it needs to be on the product. Better yet, it shouldn't even be produced. I mean, think about, what does anhydrous ammonia do? And it's an intervention. It's a pathogen killer. Well, anhydrous ammonia is really unfriendly. I mean, it's a terrible product to breathe in. I mean,
the reason he's mentioning anhydrous ammonia is because the companies that make finely textured meat, or pink slime, actually wash the meat as part of the process in anhydrous ammonia to kill the pathogens.
Anhydrous ammonia turns living soil into dead dirt. I mean, but it's the cheapest form of nitrogen, and it's what a lot of farmers are putting on the soil. But since it kills soil, it also kills pathogens on meat. But what does it do to your stomach, your gut, your digestive system as a human that eats this stuff? Well, where's the gastroenterologist? Why aren't they saying something about this?
Well, I talk about this quite a bit. Our medical community in the United States, not necessarily trying to not do the right thing, but it's a dollar amount deal. So you make a lot more money, just basic bare bones. You make a lot more money off somebody who's sick than you do if somebody's healthy.
Right.
Or trying to keep them healthy. So the system there is not really directed towards the right direction, maybe I would say. So now you're talking about how does this pink slime being in meat, creating filler that's cheap, how does that directly affect a rancher that's in Wyoming? Because I know when you're a customer, I know a lot of customers of beef, they want to actually promote ranching at this point. They want to buy beef directly from the rancher. But when you buy beef in the store that says U.S. made, how does that happen, and how does that affect directly the rancher?
Well, pink slime is just part of the problem. The bigger problem is the imported meat. So we've got a lot of really cheap imports that could come into this country from as many as 22 different countries. And it's really inexpensive. It's cheap. Well, the big guys in the middle, the big packers, processors, they're going to these countries like Brazil and Paraguay and New Zealand and Australia and various places around the world, and they're buying product below cost of production. They're beating those producers up just like they do us. And then they export that into the United States. Right now, old cows and bulls out of Uruguay, the cheap trim from the JBS and Marfrig plants that are in South America can come in here below $2 a pound. Well, that's
which from being here, that's not possible for us to.
The break
it's possible, but not break even.
The break even here is going to be a lot closer to $5 on ground beef with $2 fat cattle, and so they go to these foreign countries and these processors, these ground beef makers like Empirical Foods, which is now the new name for Beef Processors Incorporated. They can buy the imported stuff at below $2, add the waste fat from the big packers that are their friends that they're located near in Garden City, Kansas, for example, and add in the pink slime at 10 to 12%. And man, they've got a really cheap product, well below $2 in cost of production. And so they'll go out there and they'll private label that for Cisco, for US Foods, for Shamrock, for any of the big food service companies. And they would do it for smaller operations too, but they now private label that. So they manufacture it, put your name on it, and ship it into commerce at $2.50 final sale to the restaurant.
But the thing that I'm catching about what you're saying is it doesn't say this meat is from Brazil, right?
That's right.
What does it say on it? Does it say it's made in the U.S.?
It says it's product of the USA because USDA allows foreign meat to come into the country, and upon just repackaging, call it product of the USA. That's as fraudulent as you can get. And USDA is supposed to be enforcing truth in labeling, and they're the biggest violator.
So when you're buying, I just want you to be clear about this. When you're buying beef, you as the consumer, you're buying beef that says the U.S. That doesn't mean it's from the U.S. If it can be super cheap beef, it's not from here. It's packaged here with somebody's label on it, right?
Right.
But it's cheap beef from somewhere else in many cases. So you can't trust just like going into a store and saying, "Oh, this is U.S. beef."
But what we've done for the last 50 years is convince people that shopping is a good thing.
Getting the best price.
This aggressive price shopping consumerism, it's like a sport, and all we've done is cut our own throats. You need to be going out and be willing to pay more to a local rancher, a local producer of food, and make sure he's getting enough to stay in business and enough to make his kids want to come back and take their place at some point. Otherwise, we're going to be dependent upon the biggest corporations on the planet to eat, and they're not benevolent. They are not going to give their food away. They're not going to care about you when you're living under a bridge. But you got to build community. And I say build community around local food, but recognize that the cheaters are in the marketplace that are getting away with misinforming consumers, and it just needs to stop. But the first thing we have to do is give it up. Give up the aggressive price shopping consumerism. Stop being that consumer and think more about becoming a citizen. What should your community look like? What can I do to help my community, to help my neighbor, to make the place we live better? If we'll do that, we'll avoid a lot of this terrible stuff like the imported $2 trim and blended with the fat and the pink slime. We just won't eat it.
I'm going to add something to that is I have to watch prices on everything I buy because I'm just like you. I mean, I work for a living. I'm paying for a family of 4 to live and grow and do the things that people do and pay for the daily expenses of things. And, I have to work a regular job. YouTube is not my sole support of income. And by the way, thank you for those of you who do watch because I appreciate the support it does give and that it not only helps me, but it also has been something I can give back to the community out there that helped me to find this way of eating that's changed everything for me. But I've noticed that when I started being more careful about where I spend my money and less worried about how much I'm saving per penny, or, you know, the dollar a pound cheaper here or something like that, it seems like it would add up a lot faster than it does. But the funny thing is that when I get healthy food, I spend less money in the long run. You know, and I've explained this to people before, and it's hard for people to wrap their heads around, but every little thing that I do that used to involve spending a little bit of money here and there, like when I used to stop for gas at a convenience store, that stop for gas would almost always end with at least a cup of coffee or some other kind of drink from the store that was way overpriced to begin with. And in some cases, it's going to be even more overpriced. Like when you deal with coffee, you could spend $5, $6, $7, even at a convenience store now. It doesn't even have to be a Starbucks. I mean, they can claim to have Starbucks coffee and we'll still pay the full price for it. So those little things, like not paying that extra money here and there for things that I'm basically just wasting on emotional needs. It has nothing to do with feeding my body or getting me through the energy needs of a day. It has only to do with comfort food. It has to do with trying to get through the emotional, whatever it is that it takes to get through each day. I mean, we all have emotional needs and things that we have to deal with. So a lot of times we deal with those with food. Well, cutting out those kind of things from my life have just been financially better in the long run. And then also when I buy healthier meat, I enjoy the meat more. When I've bought some of this cheap meat, like sometimes I've bought meat from Save-A-Lot or from Winn-Dixie, their Rancher's Home brand, and those say right on the package that they're raised in Mexico. Not that there's anything wrong with how they might raise beef or not raise beef in Mexico, but the stuff that's getting shipped here across the border, that's getting shipped to us from Mexico, apparently is not raised as well as some of the other stuff is. From what I've been able to ascertain about it, it's grass-fed and finished, but it's not done so in a way that's like, say, for instance, comparable to the farmer that I use up in Georgia, where he's very careful that those cows don't stay in the same paddock for more than 12 hours at a time, that they're not eating the grass all the way down to the nub in the yard, and that they're not eating the grass down into the poop that they've left there, that they're not they're not eating grass that they've been walking on for the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days or whatever it is, so that they're not getting worms from chewing the grass all the way down by the ground. They move around enough to where not only does the grass get to heal and grow up some more, but the pigs and the chickens come in and they do their part. Like the pig will root around in the poop and spread it everywhere, and then the chickens will come in and scratch it around, and it just makes the whole ecosystem better. Whereas when you're dealing with the way they're raising these cows down in Mexico that I'm talking about, they're just leaving them on the land. They're not feeding them. They're essentially, these poor cows are starving, living off the land, which is not the best way to be if you're going to raise large amounts of cattle. It's just a way to do it, and unfortunately, it gets very low-fat beef that doesn't have hardly any marbling. It can be tough as shoe leather and not very enjoyable to eat. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this if I had to eat that kind of meat on a regular basis. So the amazing thing, though, is that if you're careful with your shopping and you're looking for USDA choice or better, if you're in an American store, something where you get some kind of grading that you know that the meat you're getting is not bargain basement meat, because bargain basement meat is raised bargain basement style. So it's not that you want to only have the cheapest, because it does make a difference in the quality for you. Now, if that's all you can afford, that's all you can afford. Hopefully that's not going to be the case forever for anybody. If you're having a rough time with this financially, I understand. I struggle with that myself on a regular basis. But when it comes to what's going to power your body and going to be the source of vitality for your life itself, then you might want to spend a little bit extra to make sure you're getting quality beef, if you can. I'll leave it at that.
We won't be tricked the way that we are today.
So one of the things is if you want to support ranchers, you want to support local ranchers, there's got to be ways for you to find that product, right?
Right.
And so in communities I would ask you this: what's the importance of saving small communities in the U.S.? There's certain areas in Montana, Wyoming that are growing in population, and the little towns out in eastern Montana, Wyoming, places like that are dying off because the ranches there, they can't make any money. A lot of their kids don't want to stay. Why is that important to consumers in the long run to keep the ranchers on the ground?
These are the food producing places. This is where cows eat grass and turn it into beef that we get to eat. If we continue to allow the big meat cartel, which includes the big packers, the big retailers and food service companies, to continue to steal from these ranchers, they're not going to be there. And so we're not going to have the food that they produce, but the economy's not going to have the wealth that they create when a cow eats grass and has a calf and turns into a hamburger on your plate. We've got to support these people. And they're the stewards of our land. And a cow grazing grass is a carbon sink. A cow eating grass, especially in a well-managed grazing program, can take 4 times the carbon out of the air that an otherwise poorly managed operation would do. And so it's from an environmental perspective, a cow has got to be in the environment. You know, when we first came here, when the Native Americans were the only ones here, how many buffalo?
Yeah, somewhere
100
between
million buffalo or whatever.
who knows, 30 to 60 million or more. Nobody really knows, but it was lots and lots.
Yeah,
yes.
now we have, we've got 28 million cows. I mean, it's nothing. And if you drive up through Wyoming into Montana, where are the cows? Yes, we had a drought. We did. But the prices have been so low for so long that now when the price does finally come back on calves because we've just pushed it too far, too long with low prices, we can't rebuild the herd. So now what's going to happen to the grass? It's going to burn. We're going to end up with some fires that are going to be epic fires because of the lack of grazing livestock, not only on these ranches.
That'll be blamed on global warming.
Yeah.
But so now the price is up the price is up to $3. Okay, which is great. So now the ranchers can sell the calf to the market for $3, which is almost double what they were getting. So you say this is a great thing or not?
Oh, it's a great relief, but I've been around a while. I've just seen this happen over and over again, and every time it does, it eliminates more people, especially that guy in the middle that buys the calf and hopes to sell it to a packer. He's buying in a more competitive market than he's selling in. That is a recipe for failure.
So kind of explain that. So first of all, if you don't understand the process, everybody asks me, so the price is going up in the grocery store for beef, but so the ranchers should be making a ton of money, but the ranchers aren't making any more money. So why is that? Where's the money going?
Well, the rancher is just a cost to be reduced to the big meat cartel. And so the rancher produces it in a calf. Like in Montana, you'll sell a 500-pound calf off a cow in the fall. That calf then will go to a feeder somewhere, a backgrounder. Maybe they're in Nebraska or Iowa, somewhere where there's corn growing. And then they feed that calf. And some of them are going to finish that calf up into a full weight slaughter animal. And some of them are just going to grow it and sell it off to a feedlot that does that. But you've got these middlemen that buy the calf that comes off the cow. They're really good husbandmen. They know how to treat a sick animal. They know how to create an environment where the calf is happy and healthy and doesn't get sick. Well, those guys are gone. We've lost 85,000 of those operations because
they're not making any money either. They cannot make it because
they can't make it because they're buying calves in a more competitive market than they're selling their finished product in. And
so why is the market at the top not competitive?
Because Walmart pushes down on the packer and the packer pushes down on the cattle feeder.
So who's actually making the profit? Because over the course of the last 30 years, you got lots of inflation going on.
Right.
So the rancher's not making that. I can see that in the pricing.
Right.
So who is
the
making
retailer's
that?
making the money? The Walmart, Kroger, Albertsons Safeway, Costco. They're making the money. They've captured a huge share. It used to be the packer was kind of in control. They could control the price they were paying for livestock and also dictate to the retailer. Well, now the retailer's gotten bigger than the packer, more powerful than the packer, and the retailer is able to push down on the packer. I often talk about how the big retailer is robbing the bank and the packer's driving the getaway car. Well, the packer's got the market power to pay less for livestock, but he doesn't have the market power to sell the box beef higher. And so they're in the middle, but have done extremely well, way better than they ever should have done. But the producer's losing, and they're just a cost to be reduced. They're the course of least resistance for the big retailer and the packer to increase their profits.
So over the course of these years that we've seen all this inflation, I saw a chart in there where you're talking about the price of, what do you call it? How much money, what percentage of the dollar that goes into the food, the rancher or the person who grows the food is actually making, right?
Yeah, so when I started out in 1972, when I bought my first cows, we were getting about 68% of the consumer dollar back to the farm and ranch gate, back to the producer who finished the animal and sold it to the packer.
So hold it. So that means that if you spend $1 on food, the consumer does, 68% of that goes to the rancher.
Correct.
Or the rancher is making 68% of that.
And they're the ones that have got the investment. They got the land, they've got
the risk.
They got the huge amount of risk.
Huge risk.
Huge risk. And so they were getting about 68%, and they were doing okay back in those days. They were okay. Their kids wanted to come back. The families were pretty stable. But then as the meat packer became more and more concentrated to the point they are today, 4 packers control 85% of the steer and heifer market. Now they've reduced that percentage down during COVID as low as 27%. Currently, about 37% of the final consumer dollar goes back to the farm and ranch gate. It's unsustainable. There's no way you can pay the bill. And the guys in the middle, from the meat packer through the retailer, are taking the money through abusive market power and monopoly. Purely, that's it. And they don't deserve it. They got the private equity now that's investing in all these companies, and they're demanding returns that are unreasonable. And they're destroying the ranch. They're destroying the communities that the ranchers are coming from. And rural America is like a third world country. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah. And so I was just listening to a book on the way up here, and it was talking about the demise and fall of civilizations throughout the past. It's very common to see what happens is you eventually, right now in America, we have all this land still, right? It looks like unlimited amounts of land, but it's not. It's a finite resource, right? And we're producing food for a number of people. We're still outproducing that food, the people that are there to a certain extent. Now, you're not, it's really hard to tell because we have imports coming in. We're importing all this cheap food, right?
Right.
So it's kind of mixing up that.
We're a net food importer.
We're a net food importer, which means we're actually importing more food than we're exporting.
Correct.
At some point, if you continue down the road of not worrying about your resources, we're just unlimited, we're just going to use it forever, don't worry about the rancher, he can't make it, but that's okay. At some point, that crashes, and then who has control?
Well, then it's chaos because everyone's hungry and can't get food.
And somebody can dictate the price, right?
Well, and the big companies are gone. They leave. They go somewhere else where they can strip mine, the resources of a country. And we're talking about companies like Cargill, the biggest independent corporation on the planet. We're talking about Tyson, JBS, already all of them multinational. And
multinational means they're not here in the U.S. They're multinational, meaning they're main.
Well, they may be headquartered here in the U.S.
Right.
In the case of Tyson and Cargill, JBS is headquartered out of Brazil. But these are companies that search the world for the cheapest of everything to sell into the highest consuming market, which today is the U.S. But not for long. If we can't continue to create the wealth from the soil and through agriculture, look at the amount of debt we have right now. The only hope of paying it is through production, production from the land. And we are destroying the resource. We're letting the soils wash away and blow away. David Montgomery wrote a book. That might be the one you're talking about how civilizations fail. And we're on our way big time right now.
So as a consumer, trying to find the best price for a product, we're very good at that in America. But we tend to not think about the long-term consequences of that, especially if you live in a city where I don't even know if that's true. Even in the country, you try to make your dollar last longer. So you're trying to, you're really shopping for that best price, not thinking about the long-term consequence. And then we can actually vilify our ranchers because they're harming the environment or something.
Right.
And without thinking what you're destroying is something you will have to pay for.
And we're not paying them for their stewardship, for their care of the environment and of the land and the environment. In fact, we're running them off. We've lost 44% of our ranchers since 1980. But this whole price shopping consumerism is what's made the Walton family so wealthy. And the Walmart,
Absolutely.
and Walmart's
Absolutely.
so big. And
It's a mentality too.
right, we got to get over it. I mean, it's self-destructive. It will be the end of us if we don't recover and decide it's better to support our community and help our neighbor and love one another rather than pick each other's pockets.
That's right. So I always say that ranching, just by doing what they do, just by them making a living, they actually create and protect habitat for wildlife, for our resources right out here. Just by doing what they do, they protect that. But they also create something else, and that's community. And we can get into that enormously, but that has changed drastically over the years.
Yeah, the communities are gone. We've pillaged for so long that these small communities have just simply died. Main streets are dead, they're boarded up, and there's a Walmart within maybe 30 miles away. And now there's dollar stores showing up. So, I always talk about Walmart kills.
I see exactly what they're talking about when it comes to how these small towns have died off slowly over time. And, it's just the nature of the beast of what we deal with now, where we went from having Walmarts and malls and these big super center stores that we go to, and we still go to those places, but now we've got the internet on top of that. So many of the stores, like if you need something for your house, if you need a tool or something like that, it's hard to just go buy it at a local store, because the biggest reason is they may not have exactly what you need, or if they do have what you need, they may not have it in the quality you're looking for. And you get a lot more visible, you get a lot more options when you shop online. So, and a lot of times it costs just as much and you don't have to leave the house. So it's a pretty tough situation to get around. But the one thing that we can't really buy online and have any clue about what we're getting, I mean, there's a few things. It's difficult to shop for clothes online, obviously, because until you can try it on, you don't know how well it's going to fit you. And it's like, well, do I order one to see how it's going to fit, or do I order 3 or 10 or whatever, so that I can have a number of this particular item? But then when it comes in, I don't want to have to send them all back and start over. It's the same thing. And then with food, you've got the problem of you don't know how well the food is raised, if it's clean. But then again, you don't really have that protection when you're shopping at the store either. You look at it and you think, well, it looks pretty good, but it's hard to tell when you're just looking at a package on the shelf in the store to tell whether or not this cow was raised in healthy circumstances or the cow next to it was raised in healthy circumstances. They could have been raised totally different and look exactly the same in the package. So I know that it's difficult to shop local for a lot of things when there's so many other options available online. But when it comes to our meat, it's not the hardest thing in the world. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take you getting out there and looking up who your local meat producers are. Going to a website like usabeef.org, which is how I found the local rancher that I still buy from when I buy whole cows, which I'll be picking up one in a very short time here soon. That's going to be a whole grass-fed, grass-finished cow. I can't wait to get another one. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But I found him on usabeef.org. It just mentioned that he was willing to sell direct to the public and that you could just pick it up and have it processed at a local processor, and that it was a very easy transaction. Some of them are going to be easy to work with. Some of them are going to be a little more difficult to work with. So it's going to take a little bit of effort of you getting out to meet the actual ranchers. And if you're lucky enough, they might even be willing to let you come by their ranch and show you how their process works, to maybe go by the processing shop and see how they do their process. That way you get to know the people who are involved in your food making, and you're supporting local people who are doing things that provide food for your community. the more people that are supporting people like this in your near community, the more infrastructure we have for having support when we need food in bad times. If things get really lean, we're going to want those local producers. We're not going to have to want to have to count on some company like Costco to make sure that the food is delivered to the store so that we'll have some. We got to be able to know that local places are still producing. They're bringing in animals, they're slaughtering animals, they're processing animals, they're selling animals directly to the public for people to be able to have for food. And the only way that's going to happen is if we're spending our money at those places as opposed to at the store like he's talking about here. Now, I'm just as guilty of buying a lot of meat from the store because I can't always buy food from my cattle rancher. It's kind of hard to have the cuts of meat that I want if I buy it that way, because I wind up with a lot more burger when you buy whole cows. And I like to have a lot of ribeyes. So since I can't afford to buy the ribeyes direct from my rancher that way, I buy a lot of them from the store. So I mix it up as much as I can. And you'll be able to mix it up some too. You know, maybe you can buy one cow a year and supplement the rest, you know, with what you buy from the store. But anything's better than what you're doing now if you're giving all your money to these grocers and the 85% of the meat packing being all done by the 4 major meat packers out there. Whenever we buy from those stores, that's who's getting that money. The people who aren't watching out for your bottom line, the people who are watching out for their bottom line, who are not watching out for the ranchers, who are watching to make sure that they're making as much as they can on the food. There's nothing wrong with anybody making as much as they can on their product. But when they're doing things that are detrimental to the source of the product that we're all going to need, and that's food, that's where we have a problem. And that's why we want to try to support our local ranchers as much as we possibly can, because they're the ones who are truly supporting us. And we don't want to lose that support.
Consumes the prey. Dollar stores eat the decaying remains. And when it's
Just
done, it's done.
Leftovers kind of thing.
That's right.
So one, to end on, I remembered what I was going to say. So what is the solution, or at least one of the solutions? Because I've always said it's not subsidy. You can't subsidize ranchers out of their issues. You can't, there's no program that's going to pay them money enough to make them.
Subsidies aren't the answers to any of these issues. As a matter of fact, everything that gets subsidized just gets more expensive. Have you noticed how that works? It's not helping us if it's something that we need, that everyday people need as a staple item or something that's important for their future. If every time we try to help the problem, we make the problem more prolific, we make the problem more expensive, then it makes it more of a problem. So how does that help?
Come out of this. It's solutions have to be.
Dollar stores eat the decaying remains. And when it's done, it's done.
Leftovers kind of thing.
That's right.
So one, to end on, I remembered what I was going to say. So what is the solution, or at least one of the solutions? Because I've always said it's not subsidy. You can't subsidize ranchers out of their issues. You can't, there's no program that's going to pay them money enough to make them come out of this. It's solutions have to be that ranchers are able to make more money with the land they have, enough money to where they have the incentive to keep that land and do what they do. So what's one way they can do this?
Well, you know, even St. Paul said that husbandman, the rancher, the livestockman, absolutely must be the first partaker of the fruits. Now we've given him the leftovers, the crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
He can't continue to be the husbandman that we want him to be and need him to be if we're going to succeed as a civilization. And so we have to take what steps are necessary to increase the income at the farm and ranch gate and reward that husbandman, that land steward, with enough of the consumer food dollar that he can really do his job and his kids want to come back.
Because it's more than just wanting to do your job. I mean, people say, well, ranching is the reward because it's such an amazing lifestyle. It is. But when you have the stress of the risk and the loss and the, like, I may not make it this year kind of a thing, and you're in a bad mood and your kids see that and they don't want to do that.
No.
You know?
And that's totally the way it is. Totally the way it is. You got 2 jobs in town too. So now you're actually doing all that work you used to do full time. You're doing it part time and trying to pay, you know, the bills with 2 jobs in town.
Yeah. So one of the ways that ranchers can move into making more of this money is selling directly to consumer, right?
That's right.
So how do they start going from where they're at to that?
Well, and this is good. This made the full circle back to the cheap ground beef. They can't compete with that. So when they're selling direct, there's no way they can compete with $2.50 ground beef. And the other problem is, if you're a rancher in Montana producing 400 calves a year off of your cows, you can't sell that many direct. I mean, and plus you don't have the infrastructure to slaughter and process that many animals. I mean, we've depended on these big, massive slaughterhouses for too long, and we've lost our local regional infrastructure. So we need to rebuild that.
So the first step of this actually is to bring back community in and I don't know, rejuvenate the food market in this country is by understanding from the consumer that when they see this super cheap beef, it's actually killing their local rancher.
Right. Right. And it's sort of a lost leader in some ways too, because the average price at the retail level right now, according to USDA meat price spreads, is $8.31 a pound. And any rancher that could get a fair share of $8.31 a pound would be doing okay. But that's not possible because they are, again, a cost to be reduced, and they get the crumbs. And it's all about the abusive market power in the middle. We've got to break it up.
So when you see, and also when you see like the production of a new slaughterhouse, people have this idea that if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, right? Oh, we don't want to buy oil. We don't want to extract oil here. We want to extract it from Russia and pay them billions of dollars. Kind of the mindset, right? Same thing with beef. These local communities are now attempting to build butcher, what do you call them?
Well, slaughter facilities.
Yeah, slaughter facilities.
Processing plants. And I love Temple Grandin, and she says, she's the animal welfare expert out of CSU. But she says, look, it's slaughter.
Yeah,
it's not harvesting, it's processing.
You're killing an animal.
Fine.
Yeah.
And you should know that because you need to respect what the animal has provided you and given you. Don't underestimate, don't understate what that animal is actually given in its.
I get what he's saying here. I'll tell you, there's many a times that I think about how out of touch we are with what it takes for us to be able to eat food. When I first started deer hunting, that first deer that I shot and he didn't die immediately and I didn't know what to do. I was like just the dumbest guy in the world watching this poor animal suffer because I didn't do a good job. And I thought, well, do I need to cut his throat? I didn't want to make the problem worse. So it was like, well, what's the worst thing to do here? You know, and the worst thing to do is just to sit there and wait. But you start to realize this creature that was doing its thing is out in nature doing its thing. And then you come along because you're hungry and you take its life. Well, that's one of many that day that it's going to have its life taken for that purpose. And I thank God for the animals that are put here for us to eat. And we should acknowledge that they are slaughter facilities, that this is what we're doing. We're having to kill these animals so that we can eat. These animals give us life. We got to stop being ashamed of that because we've been convinced as a people, we've been kind of convinced, we've been brainwashed to think that there's something wrong with eating the flesh of other animals. But that's what we are made to do. That is our role in nature, is to eat these animals. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to stop fighting against things that are natural just because we don't like the way they don't fit into our rose-colored glasses world. Doesn't mean we can't accept them as the truth. We have to take off the rose-colored glasses and be able to accept the fact that, yes, we have to kill animals to be able to survive. But you know what? Those animals enjoy some of the best lives while they're here, while they're being raised, while they're being fed the food they're being fed. The animals that come from the farm that I buy my cows from, you can tell these cows are just fat, happy cows. And they're majestic creatures. They're very happy. And that's the way I want to see cows surviving, is being treated properly. I don't want to see them being torn apart by wild animals. I don't want to see them being abused by those that are preparing them for food either. I want to see animals that are fat and happy, that are enjoying their life, because they're going to be feeding me. They deserve to have a good life. So I think it's important that we recognize where these animals come from. And there's nothing wrong with being thankful for the meat that we have. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging what it takes to put meat on the table, and that an animal had to lose its life so that you could continue to live yours. I think it's a good reminder for us that life is very fleeting, and that it's important for us to recognize all that we put our energy into for buying food to live each day, what life actually means, what it actually takes to live life, and not be afraid of recognizing exactly what that is. I like that he pointed that out.
In feeding you.
For you.
Yeah.
And it's also it's almost a step closer to personal responsibility for what you're doing. It's like hunting, where you're killing an animal and then you're consuming it.
Right.
It's something different in you when you do that, because you understand the responsibility you had in the death. When you're out of sight, out of mind, and you never understand it, and you don't want to say the words and all that kind of stuff, absolutely, it takes it out of the responsibility.
So 50 people from Linger in Denver, a restaurant that we sell to, get on a big tour bus and they come out to St. Francis, and we actually do a slaughter just for them to observe. And so you've got 50 people on a kill floor on our ranch in St. Francis, Kansas, and they're young people mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And they come down and they watch this slaughter, and they absolutely, no one was offended. And they had such a deep understanding when it was over, of the respect for that animal and the humane treatment that it's shown during this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this animal didn't get on a truck and travel 500 miles to a big slaughterhouse where they got off and met 6,000 animals they'd never seen before. And I mean, this is as good as it can possibly get. And so now when you go to Linger in Denver and you eat, hey, where's your meat come from? It's pretty amazing, because they've been there and they've seen it and they know the difference. And they are not price shopping, trying to beat us up on the price.
Yep.
And their customers are happy, they're profitable, and it's such an energy-filled gathering place. The way they've designed their whole venue there in that restaurant.
So we've started out with the fact that you may not know that you're eating pink slime, but we've actually gotten into the heart of an issue here, and that's what I really wanted to focus on, is do you know where your beef comes from? Where your meat comes from? Because it's kind of difficult to know if you just go into the grocery store. And these issues behind it, sometimes I say you've got to move into the future, because there's certain things you can't bring from the past and replace. We're not going to just wipe out all civilization and put buffalo back on the prairie. But there are things you can do for our future, because our future is in jeopardy in this country as far as food production, which I would say is pretty important. So when you're talking about the livelihood of the rancher and the community and the sense of community that you can gain from having ranchers directly sell to somebody, they need somebody to sell to, they need a way to do it, they need a way to butcher the animal. All of these things are happening right now, but they're difficult. How can somebody find somewhere to buy beef from a local rancher?
Well, you kind of need to just probably get on the internet and do some research. And if you have access right now and you can help others with that information, that's going to be really important. But the fact is, you cannot go to one of the large grocery stores and get anything that resembles what we've talked about in the quality and the rancher and the environment, all of that benefiting. And you talk about, well, we aren't going to bring the buffalo back, but we can most certainly bring the cows back. And we need to do that in a big, big way with good policy, because these cows heal the environment. They sequester a lot more carbon, if that's what you're worried about. And they improve soil health. They improve the health of people through the food that you eat that these cows produce. Think about the miracle of a ruminant animal. An animal that can go out there and eat that bale of hay, that can go out there and eat that grass and turn it into high protein food for us to eat. That's a gift.
Well, and I am beginning to get to that understanding where of how, I guess, because I have been to that point before, how the cow is actually taking the place in the environment of the buffalo.
Exactly.
It doesn't look the same, and I know people are worried about that, but it is actually, it's doing the same things for the soil, it's doing the same things for the earth, and it produces food directly to the consumers of this country and the world.
And
So,
cows are nicer.
and cows are a lot nicer. I've been around some buffalo. Easier to handle too.
Right, right.
Yeah. Well, hey man, thank you so much for
Absolutely,
talking to me. I
Kennedy.
appreciate
It was my pleasure.
it. It was fascinating. It's a fascinating subject, and it's really something that's near to my heart. So I appreciate you talking.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right, that's awesome. They're spreading the word. I'm trying to spread the word by talking about what they're talking about here today, by being able to take a look at these things so that we can, as carnivores, make the best choices that we can. I'm not saying that anybody who's new to this way of eating needs to be so worried about where you're getting your meat from, because I know it's hard enough making the switch from the standard way of eating, the standard American diet, to something like a carnivore way of eating, where you have to change the way you think about food. You have to change the way you think about your social interactions. There's so many things that are going to be changing as you change this lifestyle that you have that revolves around food far more than you ever thought you knew, because you're going to find out that your life really does revolve around food, and making better choices in that area is going to be the key to getting your life back. Well, at some point during your journey, you might get pretty good at this. You might get where I don't need to have food prepared all the time because I'm not worried about my cravings so much, or I know how to prepare food around my cravings, or you're not going to have to worry about some of the details that go along with eating this way because you'll just get used to it. And then you might start taking a look at, what can I do to do this better? And if you can afford it, you can spend money in places that are going to better support your lifestyle. Because when you buy things, whenever you spend money on something, whatever it is you're buying, you're voting for that product. You're voting for the production of that product to be done the way that the company who you bought it from does it. Because maybe they don't do it as bad as some other company does. Maybe they do a good job of making that product, and you've given your money to that company. You're voting for that good job. You're voting for that job well done to continue to be done. And that's what keeps civilization going, is people doing a good job. Having an option to be a rancher in a local small community is a great thing for people to be able to do if they can make a living at it. If they can't make a living at it, then they're going to find something else to do. And like they said in the video, that's going to make it harder for us to have somewhere good and natural and healthy to get our food from, so that we can have these good, healthy options, so that we're not eating the junk that people pass off as food on a regular basis these days. We have got to take control of our own health situation by being careful with what we put in our body. That starts with changing the way you eat, and then that grows along with your growth in that area. So if you can afford to buy from your local rancher, I encourage you to do that. If you can raise your own beef, if you can raise some of your own meat, that's a great idea. It's not going to be for everybody, but for those of us who do have time or do have the means to be able to do these kind of things, let's put our effort and our money and our time where we know it's going to make things better for all of us, so that everybody is able to eat better and have food that's going to be healthy for their lifestyle and going to make our civilization better, because people are happier when they're healthier. So let's make the best of whatever situation we have. Try to make sure we're getting the food we need that's going to help make us happier and healthier, and to be able to make the world a little bit better along the way by making these good choices. Well, that's all I got for this one, guys. I will see you guys next time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?